The sun is shining a little too bright. I know. I get it. But the fact of the matter is sometimes it's a good thing because we're almost done the NFL videos and all that. We're getting close to the end. This is the second last franchise I'm going to be doing a video for. Anyhow, it's amazing how some teams have great runs and can keep getting to the conference finals by any means necessary, by hook or by crook. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs of the 2020s, and of course the New England Patriots in 2000s and 2010 with their long streaks of getting to the AFC title game. The NFC had seen some teams and some moments of them getting to uh, consecutive championship games, like Dallas and San Francisco, for instance. Well, Dallas in the 80s getting to three straight NFC title games and not making it to the Super Bowl. And of course, the Niners stuff in the 90s. But did you know that there was one team that had a massive hangover and could have been to the Super Bowl at least 3 times on home turf in the championship game, but they blew it, although they made it on their fourth attempt. Yes, we're talking about Fly Eagles Fly. We're going to talk about the 2003 Eagles team that should have definitely been to the Super Bowl. So get ready. I said, are you ready? Are you ready for some Cutter What If NFL football? A weekend invasion! Yeah, it's Cutter talking to you live. We got the hits and the misses. So come join me for all the fun. All the rowdy fans come in. It's the weekend, y'all. Are you ready? Yeah, let's do this, baby. Yes. So, for massive context, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles as a franchise in the NFL. The Eagles were one of the original teams in the NFL. They were once known as the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, and they turned into the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly had a great football team with their blue collar knowledge of stuff and the fact that they could always rely on Steve Van Buren to run the ball. In the 40s, the Eagles won a famous NFL championship game in 1948, taking care of the Cardinals thanks to Steve Van Buren's winning touchdown. But did I mention that it was a massive snowstorm and almost canceled the game? But no, it didn't ruin the game. The Eagles were decent in the 50s. Like Bert Bell was not only the Eagles owner, he was the NFL commissioner. A little bit of a conflict of interest, don't you think? But I mean, Bud Selig was owner of the Brewers when he was MLB commissioner, so I can't complain about that. But I can complain about a lot of other things. Anyhow, the MLB aside, it's a massive work. But anyway, Bert Bell decided to have his NFL champion Eagles face the AAFC champion Cleveland Browns because, you know, the AAFC was going to bring some teams. So Cleveland would face Philadelphia at night in Philadelphia. And basically, Bert Bell was trying to hope his Eagles would prove the NFL was superior. But unfortunately, the Browns won 35-10. Bert Bell did go to the Cleveland dressing room and gave it congratulations. I mean, the guy at least was sporting. Well, the NFL didn't learn their lesson 19 years later as they were hoping to squish the AFL, especially with the Baltimore Colts against New York Jets. As everyone says, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Nevertheless, the Eagles were flying. They had a great offense. They had a great two-way player, as in playing offense and defense, by the name of Chuck Bednarik, who actually put Frank Gifford in such a bad state, Gifford almost retired from football right away. It took him 2 years to come back to the NFL. The fact of the matter is that the Eagles were the 1960 NFL champions, and it seemed to be their high water point. As in the 60s, they really sucked. Leonard Tose was a terrible owner of the Eagles. And Eagle fans were even pissed off in 1968 after the Eagles won a couple of meaningless games because that meant that the Eagles would not draft first and Buffalo would get the number 1 pick to take O.J. Simpson. Philly wanted O.J. Simpson. And then the Eagles on the final home game decided to take their aggression out on a guy playing Santa Claus and pelt him with snowballs. That trope is still around Philadelphia since 1968. Nevertheless, the Eagle fans were rowdy. Veterans Stadium was a hellhole, if you will. and a lot of things happened. In the 1980s, the Eagles kind of got better. I mean, it all started with the miracle in the Meadowlands in 1978 when the Eagles beat the Giants, thanks to the Giants deciding to run the ball instead of taking knees to run out the clock. And Sarchuk fumbled the snap, and Herman Edwards, yes, that Herman Edwards, came in to score a touchdown. Hello, you played to win the game. And the Eagles won that game, and teams started to take knees to kill the clock. You can just be assured that Eagles got to Super Bowl 15. Their owner, well, Leonard Toast died the day before, and the Eagles were doomed as Oakland's Rod Martin made 3 interceptions, and the Raiders beat the Eagles. And then you got yourself the fact that the Eagles in the 80s were not that bad. I mean, they had Reggie White and Jerome Brown on defense, and Randall Cunningham throwing the ball. Unfortunately, though, Jerome Brown would die in a car accident when a car actually hit him and his nephew while they were outside. So you could tell that it's just not fair and all that. Reggie White would leave to Green Bay by free agency. Randall Cunningham was not the same after a 1990 injury. Or was it 91? I think it was 91. Nevertheless, the Eagles were struggling and all that. They were floundering. But then by the late 90s, they turned everything around. They had a good defense. They like Troy Vincent and Jeremiah Trotter, for example, and then good game running in by Deuce Staley. Ricky Waters was on the Eagles for a while. Irvin Fryar was on the Eagles for a while. But in 1999, the Eagles had a chance to get Ricky Williams, this powerful record-setting running back from Texas. Who did they pick? Donovan McNabb, a quarterback from Syracuse. Fans went nuts. They booed the fuck out of McNabb. The joke was on them because McNabb kept leading the Eagles to NFC title games. And we'll talk about what NFC title game boo boo later on. But the Eagles were a decent team with McNabb and Co. The Eagles would have to rebuild a couple times, and they are the defending Super Bowl champions as of this video, of course. Of course, pissing me off because I went Kansas City and made my first mistake in the Super Bowl picks in 4 years. But nevertheless, the Eagles could fly. And we remember the Fly Eagles Fly song is one of the most iconic in NFL history. But anyway, let's talk about the 2003 Eagles. Why don't we? So the 2003 Philadelphia Eagles, it was their 71st season in the league. They were 12-4. Unfortunately, they lost the NFC title game. They made the playoffs for the fourth straight year. For the third straight year, they were the NFC East winners and the NFC top record for the second straight season. Philly lost to Tampa in the 2002 NFL NFC title game, which led Tampa to face Oakland. I could have easily done the 2002 Eagles at Veterans Stadium, but then I'm thinking to myself, 2003 they had a much better chance. And the fact was, Tampa had not won a cold weather game for a while. Anyway, Philly looked to turn the page with the opening of Lincoln Financial Field. They got rid of that shit show Veterans Stadium. But the Eagles lost their first 2 games there. They were actually 2-3. And it looked like they were going to lose to be 2-4. But Brian Westbrook, in the closing minutes against the Giants, actually got a punt return for a touchdown and helped the Eagles get to 3-3. It turned their season around, winning 9 straight games to go to 12-4. In the playoffs, the Eagles needed a miracle against the Packers on 4th and 26. Anyway, Deuce Staley actually held out, but then he came back. But they had to have a running back by committee with Staley, Westbrook, and Cornell Buckhalter. But it worked out quite well. In fact, their receiving core for the Eagles was so weak that they didn't even get a receiving touchdown until week 9. A lot of people thought McNabb should be replaced by A.J. Feely, but the coach, Andy Reid, kept going to him. Anyway, the defense did decently. L.J. Smith, a tight end from Rutgers, was the main guy for Philly in the draft. Sorry, Jerome Dougal. The final roster was that McNabb would be the starter, A.J. Feely the backup. They lost Carlos Edmonds and Hollis Thomas to the IR. That could have helped them. The Buckhalter, Staley, Westbrook, three-headed monster with John Ritchie at fullback, Freddie Mitchell, Greg Lewis, and Todd Pinkston, and James Frazier at wide receiver, Chad Lewis and L.J. Smith for tight ends, offensive linemen of note, Hank Freely, John Runyon, Trey Thomas, and Bobby Williams, defensive linemen of note, Marco Coleman, Andy Kalu, Jerome McDougal, Corey Simon, and Brandon Whitting. Linebackers of note: Ike Reese, Mike Semino, and Nate Wayne. DBs: Sheldon Brown, Brian Dawkins, Quinton Mikkel, Leo Shepard, Bobby Taylor, and Troy Vincent. Special teams: David Akers at kicker, Dirk Johnson at punter. So yeah, that was huge. They were 2-3, and then they had a 9-game winning streak. They beat the Giants, and then they beat the Jets, Falcons, Packers, Giants, Saints, Panthers, Cowboys, Dolphins. They did lose in overtime on home turf to San Fran, but then won in Washington, which was a key one. Dallas did win 10 games and get the sixth and final spot in the NFC playoff race. So Philly began the 1 seed. All roads led to Rome, through Rome. So they would take on those pesky Packers and win 20-17. It was very cold. It was in the minuses Celsius wise. Anyway, the Packers actually were up 14-0. They stood far throwing 2 touchdowns to Robert Ferguson. McNabb did Staley made it 14-7. In the fourth quarter, McNabb tied it up with a touchdown at Pinkston. A pair of field goals, including a 37-yard field goal by David Akers to force overtime. And, of course, 4th and 26. Let's not forget about that. So, anyway, Team of Destiny. The Team of Destiny. Well, anyway, 4th and 26. The Packers had something to go. Brett Favre lost his father earlier in the season and needed to do something. So, yeah, they had a 4th and 26 and all that. McNabb threw a ball over the middle for Freddie Mitchell, but Mitchell ran it and got it a 28-yard gain because forward progress had it on, and then they kicked the field goal. Favre actually heaved the ball in the air in overtime, but got picked up by Brian Dawkins, who set up a winning field goal. Akers kicks the winning field goal, and Green Bay could not believe their luck. Then they took on the seemingly weak Carolina Panthers. They were hoping not to have a repeat. Unfortunately, though, the Eagles lost 14-3 to Carolina, their third straight championship game defeat and second in a row at home. Oh yeah, their first one was a road game against the Rams, and they had even beaten Carolina. And the Panthers, strangely enough, that 2001-02 season, they were 1-15, and then 2 years later they won 11 games, shocked the Rams in double overtime on Steve Smith's touchdown catch, and all that. So yeah, Carolina pulled off a couple touchdowns to win 14-3. McNabb would have torn cartilage in his ribs. So basically, they didn't know what to do and all that. McNabb would be replaced in the fourth quarter. But yeah, the Eagles could not believe their luck. And they were sour over it. The joke was on everyone else, as the Eagles, on their fourth straight championship game appearance, actually did win the championship game to go to the playoffs, the final against the Patriots, and almost pulled it off. But anyway, what if these 2003 Eagles did get to face the Patriots in the Super Bowl a year early? Let's see. Anyway, the Eagles and Patriots would have met in the Super Bowl, both with balanced offenses. Of course, when we do playoff stuff in one conference, we leave the other conference alone. So the Patriots would have won the Super Bowl bid in the AFC. Eagles would face the Patriots. Patriots were the home team in 2004. Let's see what happens. Well, that's what happens. Anyway, let's give it a look. The Patriots get the ball first, and then 5 plays, 80 yards, including that big touchdown by Troy Smith, and makes it 7-0. Unfortunately, L.J. Smith fumbled the ball, and New England recovered. In the second quarter, Vinatieri kicked the field goal to make it 10-0. Akers then on a 16-play, 62-yard play. Drive actually got down to the field. They were actually at first and goal at the 6, but McNabb was sacked twice by Gerard Cherry and Richard Seymour. They needed to kick a field goal to make it 10-3. Philly would have to punt. So 10-3. And then the third quarter, Philly got the ball first, and then Akers made a 34-yard field goal to make it 10-6. And in the fourth quarter was supposed to be the end of it. Philly would have to punt. New England punts, and Philly drives from their 11 to the 33-yard line of New England and go for a field goal. Akers misses wide right, 50 yards. New England punts, And then McNabb unfortunately got sacked twice by Ronnie Harris and Mike Vrabel. They were at the 17 of Philly, and they decided to throw it past Brady the Branch. This game was over 17-6. The Eagles would have lost to the Patriots just like the next year. Ronnie Harrison was named MVP. Ronnie Harrison, really? Efficiency, Philly was 11 for 23. New England was 4 for 11. Rushing, 122, 115 for New England. Passing, 171, 100 for Philly. McNabb, 21 for 36, 219, and an interception to Ronnie Harrison, who had 14 tackles and 2 sacks, even though he's a defensive back. Brady, 9 for 17, 100 yards. Pitcher made from 25. Akers made from 35, 34, missed from 50. But yeah, I don't think the Eagles would have. I don't think the Patriots would have won the Super Bowl. The Eagles would have won the Super Bowl. I could have done 2002 Eagles against Oakland, but I think Philly would have won that. But yeah, this simulation, the Eagles would have lost the Super Bowl, and that's how it is. Anyway, I'm Jeff. I'm going to do.